Did you know that in the year 1928, a presidential candidate's campaign slogan was, "Make your wet dreams come true"? Here are 5 interesting and awesome facts about U.S. presidential elections. The greatest political button of all time. New York Governor Alfred E. Smith was the first Roman Catholic to gain a major party's presidential nomination in 1928. Al Smith, a Democratic nominee with Irish, German, and Italian heritage, appealed to a whole new demographic of voters, including women who had won the right of suffrage in 1920. As a wet, anti-prohibition candidate, Al's campaign slogan, "Vote for Al and make your wet dreams come true," is one of the most interesting campaign slogans of any presidential election. Although the term is a sexual innuendo, it was described as a nocturnal emissions in Dr. William Acton's 1851 book, A Practical Treatise on the Disease of the Urinary and Generative Organs in Both Sexes. Smith's issues were about the national alcohol ban, anti-immigrant bias, and the terrorization of Catholic immigrants across the country by the Ku Klux Klan. Smith lost the election to Republican Herbert Hoover, who had campaigned on the promise of a chicken in every pot and 2 cars in every garage. Animal symbols. Have you ever wondered how the Republican and Democratic parties got their animal symbols? "Let the people rule" was the slogan of the Democratic nominee Andrew Jackson in 1828. Jackson was considered the first anti-establishment populist candidate. He wasn't a career politician, but a military hero of the War of 1812. During the presidential race, his opponent called him a jackass. Rather than rejecting the label, Jackson was amused by it and incorporated the animal in his poster. Influential political cartoonist Thomas Nast first used the donkey in a Harper's Weekly cartoon published in 1870. His rendition helped popularize it as the party's mascot. An image of an elephant was featured as the Republican symbol in one political newspaper cartoon illustration during the Civil War. Seeing the elephant was an expression used by soldiers to mean experienced combat. However, the elephant symbol didn't take hold as a GOP symbol until Thomas Nast, who was considered the father of the modern cartoon, used it in the 1874 Harper's Weekly magazine. The image of the elephant, labeled "The Republican Vote," was shown standing at the edge of a pit, mocking the New York Herald, which had been critical of President Ulysses Grant's bid for a 3rd term. Along with the donkey and the elephant, German-born Nast is also credited for the modern image of Santa Claus. This election is notable for being the only presidential election in which a major party nominee died during the election process. On Tuesday, November 5, 1872, the United States' 22nd quadrennial presidential election was held in which Republican incumbent Ulysses S. Grant ran against liberal Republican Horace Greeley and 4 other candidates. Before the election was finalized, Horace Greeley became ill and died on November 29th. His untimely death was before the electoral votes were officially cast. Greeley's 63 electoral votes were distributed among 4 individuals: Thomas A. Hendricks, 42 votes, Benjamin G. Brown, 18 votes, Charles J. Jenkins, 2 votes, and David Davis received 1 vote. Greeley won only 6 states: Georgia, Kentucky, Maryland, Missouri, Tennessee, and Texas. The ultimate absentee ballot. Like other forms of absentee voting, voting from space starts with a federal postcard application, or FPCA. It's the same form military members and their family fill out while serving outside of the U.S. Before deployment, crew members fill out the form ahead of their launch. This signals their intent to participate in an election from space. Because astronauts reside in Houston, Texas during training, most vote as Texas residents. Once their FPCA is approved, astronauts are ready to vote via a secure electronic ballot generated by the clerk's office of Harris County. Johnson Mission Control Center uplinks the ballot to the voting crew member. An email with crew member specific credentials is sent from the county clerk to the astronaut. Once received, the astronauts will cast their vote, and the secure completed ballot is downlinked and delivered back to the county clerk's office. Did you know that 8 presidents have died while in office? Here are 8 presidents who died while serving office from 1841 to 1963. William Henry Harrison was an American military officer and politician who served as the 9th President of the United States in 1841. He died of pneumonia 31 days into his term, becoming the first president to die in office and the shortest serving president in U.S. history. Zachary Taylor was the 12th President of the United States, serving from March 1849 until his death from gastritis in July 1850. Taylor previously was a career officer in the United States Army, rose to the ranks of a major general, and became a national hero as a result of his victories in the Mexican-American War. He died 16 months into his term. He made no progress on the most divisive issues in Congress, slavery. Abraham Lincoln was an American statesman and lawyer who served as the 16th President of the United States from 1861 to 1865. Lincoln led the nation through the American Civil War, the country's greatest moral, constitutional, and political crisis. On the night of April 14, 1865, the actor and Confederate sympathizer, John Wilkes Booth, shot Lincoln in the back of his head. After remaining in a coma for 8 hours, Lincoln died at 7:22 a.m. on April 15, 1865. James Garfield was the 20th President of the United States, serving from March 4, 1881 to July 2, 1981. Garfield was the only sitting member of the United States House of Representatives to be elected to the presidency. He was shot by Charles J. Guiteau, a disgruntled office seeker at the Baltimore Potomac Railroad Station in Washington, D.C. on July 2, 1881. William McKinley was the 25th President of the United States from 1897 to 1901. During the McKinley presidency, he led the nation to victory in the Spanish-American War, raised tariffs to promote American industry, and kept the nation on the gold standard in rejection of the expansion of free silver. On September 6, 1901, at the Temple of Music on the Exposition Grounds, Leon Czolgosz waited in line with the public to meet McKinley. When Czolgosz reached the head of the line, he shot McKinley twice in the abdomen. McKinley died 8 days later on the morning of September 14, 1901. Warren Harding was the 29th President of the United States. A member of the Republican Party, he was one of the most popular U.S. presidents to that point. Pledging a nostalgic return to normalcy following World War I, Harding won the presidency by the greatest popular vote margin at that time. On August 2, 1923, Harding died, initially attributed to a cerebral hemorrhage, as doctors at that time did not generally understand the symptoms of cardiac arrest. Harding's death came as a great shock to the nation, as he was liked and admired. Both the press and the public had followed his illness closely and been reassured by his apparent recovery. After his death, a series of scandals would soon be revealed and doom his administration as the most corrupt in the nation's history. Franklin D. Roosevelt, FDR, was the 32nd President of the United States from 1933 to 1945. A member of the Democratic Party, he won a record 4 presidential elections and became a central figure in world events during the first half of the 20th century. In response to the worst economic crisis in U.S. history, Roosevelt directed the federal government during most of the Great Depression, implementing his slate of New Deal programs and reforms that redefined the role of the federal government in lives of Americans. His third and fourth terms were dominated by World War II, which ended shortly after he died in office. Roosevelt suffered a massive cerebral hemorrhage and died on April 12, 1945. He was succeeded in office by his vice president, Harry S. Truman. John F. Kennedy, or JFK, was the 35th President of the United States from January 1961 through November 1963. 43-year-old John F. Kennedy became one of the youngest, as well as the first, Roman Catholic U.S. presidents. He served at the height of the Cold War and confronted mounting tensions in Cuba, Vietnam, and elsewhere. Kennedy also led a renewed drive for public service and eventually provided federal support for the growing civil rights movement. On a political trip to smooth over frictions in the Democratic Party in Texas, Kennedy was assassinated, traveling in a presidential motorcade through downtown Dallas. Former U.S. Marine Lee Harvey Oswald shot Kennedy once in the back, the bullet exiting via his throat, and once in the head. Kennedy was taken to Parkland Hospital for emergency medical treatment, where he was pronounced dead 30 minutes later. He died on November the 22nd, 1963. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the Matter of Facts channel and click on the bell for notification.